everybody, Stage Left Audio Productions, and we're going to be looking at the simplified signal path on an analog board for a reverb and for subgroups over into a limiter, crossover into an amplifier, and ultimately out to the speakers. The rest of the video shows the actual live equipment, but thought that a sort of a picture diagram of what we're actually doing would help out when you're watching the video. Basically, what we're doing is we're taking an input of any kind here. We're just going to use, let's say, a microphone, because that's what we're going to use here in the for the live part of it. It comes into a mixer, and then from the mixer, the signal is going to be sent out auxiliary 3 over to a reverb unit, and the reverb unit is going to return it to one of the channels. From there, the signal path is going to go over to one of the subgroups, where we have an insert cable on a subgroup compressor right here. So the signal is going to come into the compressor and come back at the same point. This is different than the reverb unit, where the signal travels to the reverb unit but comes back on a different channel. Doing this allows you to have control over the reverb signal, and this also works for a delay if you have a delay unit. Then from there, from the subgroup, the signal path is then routed over to the front of house main mix, and as you see in the video, we have an EQ sitting on front of house as an insert. So the signal at front of house comes out of the insert into the front of house EQ and back to the board. Same as what did here for the subgroup under the compressor. From there, when it returns to the board, the signal is going to go out the main output of the board, the whole board, the main output, and it's going to be routed over to a limiter. From the limiter, it's going to go into the crossover, where the crossover is going to split the signal for the lows. This is going down one path into the input on one side of the amplifier, and the mids and highs are going to be going out the other path out of the crossover into the other channel of the amplifier, and then ultimately from there, the signal has been sent to the speakers for mid and high and for the sub. So when you watch the video, this is basically what is taking place. And so this is on an analog board only, and for those of you who are new to this, new to the field, this is basically what is taking place, and probably at a minimum what you would have in a sound system. Okay, got an email from somebody a couple of weeks ago, and sorry it's taken so long to respond. They were asking about a basic signal path of let's just say a vocal going through a mixing board and going through effects and ultimately out to the speakers. And what they're wanting to know is basically utilizing some effects. What is the signal path that's taken from the mixing board, let's say, into reverb, delay, maybe compression, and then into a crossover out to the speakers. Basically, they just want to know what the path was. So here, we're going to be looking at, and actually we're using our mid-size board for this, but we're going to be taking a look over at how the signal path runs from basically one of the channels on the board, coming into the output on it, and we're going to be looking at the subgroups, which we have the subgroups right there. And the signal path is going to lead us over to the one of the effects racks, and this is just as an example. We have another effects rack, but we probably won't need to use that for this. But we're going to add some reverb to it, which we've got right here on the lexicon unit, and the DBX unit there is going to be providing some compression because we're going to add our vocal to a subgroup. And then out of the board, it's going to go into a front house EQ, which we really don't need to adjust, but maybe just slightly if we think that the front house sound is not as maybe as correct, or maybe it's not as good as it could. And then from there, it's going to go into this DBX drive rack unit, where it's acting as our crossover. And as you can tell right there, channel 1 there on the far left is going to be for mids and highs. Channel 2 there is lows. And as you can tell, they are not muted, so they're on. The rest of the channels there are muted. And it's going to come out of there, and in this example, we're just going to use a PLX 3402. Come on, we want the focus there. There we go. Channel 1 there on the left well, here we go. Channel 1 on the left is going to be for the mids and highs, and the channel there on the right is going to be for the subs. And then ultimately, they're going to come out to a JBL, that's a S728, and we're coming out for the mids and highs. We're going to be using the speaker there on the right, that top right one there. That's a PVQW2F. So let's just sort of get started, and we'll take a look at how the whole signal path goes. Okay, so to start with, we've got one input coming in here. We're going to be using just a basic microphone, and really the inputs, all the inputs that along here could be coming from a snake. But for this example, it won't matter if we're 5 feet from the board or 300 feet from the board. All the inputs are going to come into here, so we're going to be using input number 10 here, and we're going to be using a Sennheiser microphone. That's a Sennheiser E835. Okay, so to start, what we're going to do is use a Sennheiser, the E835 microphone, and we're going to be using channel 10. So the first thing we want to do for our signal path, and as you remember, we've got the cable coming in the back into channel 10. We want to turn channel 10 on, and right now I'm talking to the microphone, but we don't see any lights. So the first thing we got to do is we're just going to set our gain up some just to make sure we have some signal coming through. Check 1 2 1 2. Okay, now as you can see right there, we've got the signal coming through. Check 1 2 1 2. We know it's coming through. We're going to turn it up just a little bit. We're going to take a look at the pre-fade listen. And as I'm talking, check 1 2 1 2. You can see the pre-fade listen levels working. Check 1 2 1 2. Now what we want to do for the signal path is we want to route all this traffic, all the vocal traffic. We can just say all these mics are vocal. We want to route it to, we're going to use subgroup number 1. So we're going to turn our knob, our pan knob to the left, and we're going to assign the signal over here to number 1. 1's on the left, 2's on the right. And I've got another video sort of showing this. So our signal is now being routed over to the subgroup. Okay, now that we've got the microphone signal panned over into the subgroup, we're going to be setting the subgroup to have it pan out to the left hand side so that it comes out the left output of the main. And so all of our traffic that was done over here on this channel is now being routed over here to subgroup number 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the levels. As you can see, the pre-fade and after fade level here. Nothing's coming through, but we're going to turn it up on the subgroup level. So there it is. It's coming through our subgroup, and we can see this here. This is our subgroup level here. Now, what we're going to take a look at is some of the routing for the effects, such as reverb. Okay, we're just going to pan it back around, and normally on a board, like a mid-sized board, usually auxiliary 1 and 2 are used for monitors. 3 and 4 are used for effects. So for here I've got auxiliary 3 set for reverb. So we're just going to turn this up a little bit. I'm just going to set that at what Yamaha says here is probably unity. We're just going to leave it at that, and then we're going to set the main output for auxiliary 3 so that we can send the signal out to the reverb unit. Okay, now all these knobs along here are the main outputs. So what we're going to do is take auxiliary 3 and we're going to turn this up. We're just going to set it here to what Yamaha shows here is unity. Now normally in live sound we wouldn't be setting these really where they are. During the sound check we would be determining really how loud we need to set these levels. So as it stands right now, we've got the signal going into the subgroup, as well we've got the microphone signal going into the reverb. Okay, so now that we have the signal coming out of the board into the reverb unit, let's just take a look to see what channels, I'm sorry, not what channels, but what outputs and inputs are used to send a signal out to the reverb unit. Now, as you can tell right here, this is the output for auxiliary 3. Now, you probably can't see that, but it goes auxiliary 1, 2, and 3. So this is the output for auxiliary 3. It's going out down this cable here, along this, into the back of the unit, into the back of the lexicon unit, to the input. And then the output on the back of the lexicon unit, I have coming up here and returning into to channels 23 and 24. It's a stereo channel, but I'm using 23 here. As you can probably tell, maybe not, but it's going into the left. 23 shows as the left, 24 shows as the right. So I've got it coming into the left side. This is just for the reverb. Now, for the subgroup, which we have right here, okay, for the subgroup setting right here, we want to apply compression to this subgroup. So let's just say this whole subgroup is for vocals. We want the vocals, we want to have more control over the vocals, or the entire vocals. So we can have like a whole bunch of channels here if we wanted to, and have them all into one subgroup. Okay, so for the subgroups, we're going to add some compression into the subgroups. So to do that, there is an insert on the back of the board that allows us to send the signal from a subgroup into a compressor and have it return to the same channel. Now right here, we have the group inserts. We have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So insert number 1, this is where we have the vocals. This cable, it's a special cable. This is going down the signal, down the path here, and it's going into the compressor, a DBX compressor. But it's also coming back and returning back to the insert. And then from there, we have an insert, which is, I had another video on this. There's an insert here for the front of house EQ. So we've got an EQ on front of house as an insert, just like it was over here with the compressor. The signal travels down this wire into the DBX EQ, and then it comes right back into the same point. And then from there, it's going to come out to the main front of house output. Okay, and from the front of house output, this is going to be, that signal is going to be sent over to this DBX unit right here. And this is basically providing, it's sort of a catch-all if something should happen. We have a limiter set on it, but really for in here it won't matter. And a bunch of these here are not going to matter just because of how it's being used right now. But it's going to come to this limiter, and out of this limiter, it's going to go into this drive rack. It's a 260 unit, and this is going to be providing our low and a mid-high crossover. From there, the signal is going to be sent down to this amplifier here, and then ultimately it's going to be sent over to the speakers. Okay, now that we've seen how the signal path basically is physically, let's take a look at it and actually see it in action. So, as you remember, we have channel 10 that we're using, which is currently on. We have the, there we go, see that one knob that's sort of to the right there? That is our reverb. Reverb is set. As we pan down, and we've got our signal routing set up, so it's number 1 there on the left, and we've got it panned over, the channel is on. We know we have a signal coming through, so now what we want to do is take a look at the signal coming through for the reverb portion of it. And we're going to be using this channel right here. This is 2324, so we're going to turn that on. And that's going to be the channel that the reverb is going to be returning on. So as an example here, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Okay, and now you can see the, here, I'll zoom in here a little bit so you can see that. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. And as you notice, there's a delay that's coming in. And this is because check 1 2, check 1 2. That's because of the reverb. There's a delay when I have it set for when the reverb actually turns on. Check 1 2, check 1 2, 1 2. So there's just a slight delay when I have the reverb actually turning on. And actually they call it a pre-delay. Okay. So maybe we can start hearing something coming out of here. So we're going to add just a little bit of reverb into it. Okay, make sure we're full here. Check 1 2, check, check 1 2 2. Okay, as you can tell, there's reverb coming through. Check 1 2. Okay, that was the after fade listen. I'm just watching the meters. Okay, we'll just turn it on so you can watch it. Now something's actually there. But this right here, so you can tell there's nothing coming out. So we know we've got a good signal coming through. That is an awful lot of reverb. But I said for this example here, this is just to show you how it works. We can take it out. Now there's no reverb. No reverb at all. And then you can dial in however much reverb you want to come back. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. 2 2 2 2 1. Yeah, that's a little bit too much. Well, I think you get the idea here. So, with that working, let's take a look up here and see what the rack units are doing. All right, check 1 2. All right, so we've got the whole signal path working, right? So let's take a look at the first stop that our signal does, and that's in the reverb unit here. Check 1 2. Okay, you see you can see the input level working there. Check 1 2. I've got it sort of set low, which is fine. Fine for in here as an example. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. And if you remember, that level there is coming from auxiliary 3 on the board. Check 1 2. Okay, the next stop that it's taking is into the subgroups. So here we've got a compressor working on the subgroups. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. And once again, the settings that I have set here is just for illustration, just to show how this works. Obviously, in a live sound situation where there's an actual band and things are working, a lot of these settings would be a bit different. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Okay, so it's compressing. So, and if you remember on our signal path, our next stop is the front of house EQ. So we're going to pan down to that. There we go. Take a look at it. Check 1 2. Check 1 2. Now that signal there, check 1 2. That signal is coming through the main output on the board. So if I turn that down here, now as you notice, it's on an insert. It's on an insert, so check 1 2. See, now you don't hear anything, but the signal's still coming through. This is the benefit of having an EQ on front of house as an insert versus an inline EQ. Once again, I have another video that sort of explains how that works. So check 1 2. Okay, we're going to add a little bit more here. Check 1 2. 1 2. Check 1 2. 2. Okay, then from there, from the EQ, it goes into this DBX unit here. Oh, there we go. And I said this is just sort of a catch-all, kind of a limiter thing. We shouldn't really see any lights going on here, but the signal is being passed through that. So then from there, there's a compressor. It goes right into the DBX unit here. Check 1 2. As you can see the input right there. Check 1 2. Channel 1. Check 1 2. As you can tell there on the left light lighting up there, that's for the mids and highs, and the one on the right is the low. Check 1 2 2. Get a little bit more bass in there. Check 1 2 2. Okay. So from there, that output is taking us down to. Okay, we're going to pan down here a little bit. Okay, right down into the amplifier. There we go. Check 1 2. Check 1, 2, 2. Check 1, 2, 2. Now the left hand side there is the mids and highs. Okay, and the right, check 1, 2 is the bass. So we're going to add just a little bit of power here so you can see them moving there. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2, 2. Check 1, 2. And then out of the amplifier, then over to the speakers it goes. Check 1, 2, 2. So in a nutshell, that's our basic signal path for a mixing console. There are obviously different variations, all depending upon how you want to use it and how it needs to be used. Hope this helps.